I remember seeing Brian Urlacher a few times when he was playing at New Mexico in his last season, 1999. And I looked at this white dude, this big white dude, flying all over the field, doing all these things for the Lobos. And I said, my God, this dude is a stud. And I knew he was the right dude for the Chicago Bears. Ask anybody that knew me at the time. I talked about him to the point of annoyance. I knew he was that dude. I knew he was special. And I was able to watch as the Bears drafted him 9th overall in 2000. Not because they wanted to, but because guys like Thomas Jones and Plaxico Burress were taken ahead of him, who general manager Mark Hadley at the time had been on record saying he wanted more of. It was the default pick. The default pick was Brian Urlacher. And what a default pick that was. He's been one of the best Bears of my lifetime. He became a All-Pro, a Defensive Player of the Year, the face of a franchise for over a decade. And oh, by the way, he got his gold jacket as a first ballot inductee into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And talking about Urlacher, I think about just what a unique physical specimen and a unique athletic talent he was at the middle linebacker position. And he really, truly was. He was Seau, but arguably even bigger and quicker and faster. And that's saying something. And I know Seau played a lot outside, and Urlacher didn't have those level of instincts and nose for the game of football. But Urlacher was something special as a talent. And I thought, as Urlacher came in and wrecked the league, and when you talk about in the early mid-2000s, the first half of that decade, from let's say 2000 to 2005, it was Urlacher in 2000 and then Vic getting drafted in 2001. Those two guys were the biggest stars in the league for over a half decade. That cannot be disputed. When you look at jersey sales and buzz and what have you, Vic was the star on offense. Urlacher was the star on defense. Those two guys were the face of the league. You can talk about the Peyton Mannings and the Tom Bradys and the Brett Favres and all these other guys. The stars were Vic and Urlacher, period. But I was always wondering when I was going to see a guy that reminded me of Urlacher because he was big, because he was so quick, he was so fast and so athletic and could do everything. I always thought he was going to be one of those player comparisons that I threw out very, very rarely when it came to a draft prospect and felt very, very hesitant to do because ultimately he ended up being a first ballot Hall of Famer. Well, come 2018, I found a guy that reminds me a lot of Brian Urlacher, except he's even a little bit taller. And that is Tremaine Edmunds from Virginia Tech. I'm pretty sure this comes as a surprise to not many of you at all that watch me or follow me on a consistent basis that I would be high on a guy like Tremaine Edmunds. You're talking about a 6'5", 250-pound-ish linebacker. I mean, this is a big-ass dude who's big enough to play inside in a 4-3, a 3-4. He can also play as an outside linebacker in a 4-3. He can play as an edge rusher in a 3-4. Yes, he can. He's just a freakish dude. And then you're talking about a kid who ran a 4.53 in the 40 at the combine, and you see that quickness, speed, and athleticism on tape consistently. You see that ability to make plays all over the field, great range. I mean, there's so much to get excited about. He plays the run pretty well. He's relatively adept in coverage, and he's definitely got the athleticism to be a high-end cover guy, similar to what an Urlacher was in man-to-man and specifically in zone. Like, one of the things that really made the Bears cover two defense under Lovie work in the mid-2000s was, yes, you had Tommy Harris up front, you had Urlacher and Briggs at the linebacker position, then you had Mike Brown at the back of the secondary, you had Peanut Tillman playing corner. But what really made that cover two work was how much range Urlacher could cover in the middle of that defense. He really made that cover two work so very well because he could cover more range than anybody else that would play the middle backer in that cover two spot. He covered so much more range. And I see Tremaine Edmunds as a guy that could do that too, with some upside as a pass rusher, even a little bit more than Urlacher. He can hit the gap with a fire and a quickness as an inside blitzer, shows you a little bit of ability to get around and bend the edge, use his length. I mean, when I look at him, plays with a decent motor. The kid's, all of 19 years old. He'll be a 20-year-old rookie. His dad, Farrell Edmunds, was a former 2-time Pro Bowler for the Miami Dolphins as a tight end. Like, he's got bloodlines, he's got size, quickness, athleticism, speed. He can make an impact in several areas of the field. To me, this dude is close to a can't-miss stud in this draft as you get once you get past the big names like the Nelsons and the Chubbs and the Barkleys. He's got that level of upside. He's got that type of physical talent and ability. And it's enough to make me think he's a top 5 talent in this draft class. And to me, he is. There's only one real concern that I have about him, and it is a big, significant one. And it is something Urlacher struggled with early in his career. And that is a natural instinct and awareness for the game of football and for the linebacker position. When I look at Tremaine Edmunds, he needs a lot of work there. And maybe part of that is because he's a younger talent. Maybe part of that is because he played in different spots in that Vatek defense. But he's consistently slow, recognizing the play. He doesn't show you much in terms of anticipation. Where that lack of anticipation, that lack of recognition could come into play is his range, where he still has the natural athleticism to be able to get sideline from sideline. The problem is that he can take some really bad angles that impacts his range because he doesn't have the best natural feel and instinct for the game, for the position. He can be absolutely destroyed against play action. Something that Urlacher, especially early in his career, was pretty bad at times, was he would bite and he would bite hard. These big, fast, speedy linebackers can have a tendency to be over-aggressive, and Tremaine Edmunds most certainly can be that. And in general, when you're talking about a middle linebacker, you want a guy that's going to be the alpha dog in the middle of that linebacking core. And if it's not one of the safeties, it's the linebacker that's making all the sight adjustments. He's the one making the calls. He's the one that's setting the defense. He's the one that's making all the changes. You want that middle linebacker to be able to anticipate what's coming. You want that middle linebacker to be good enough at what he does that he's the one that forces the quarterback and the offense to change, not vice versa. You want active versus reactive, proactive versus reactive. And I really am concerned about Tremaine Edmunds and his ability to dissect information, his ability to diagnose plays, his ability to be that mental alpha dog for a defense. And that makes me worry about whether or not he can truly be a middle linebacker in the NFL. Is he better off as a 3-4 outside linebacker or a 4-3 outside linebacker? And if he is there, he has much more of a way to go as a pass rusher. And if you're talking about him as a 4-3 outside linebacker, either weak side or strong side, is he really a top 5 type of talent in this class? Like, I'm not underselling it. His instincts are really, really bad. He's out of position a lot. He's slow to recognize consistently. He fails to anticipate. He takes bad angles to the football, all because of a lack of great football instincts at this stage of his career. So it is the one thing that really gives me pause. It is the one thing that makes me really concerned. It is the one thing that makes me say, maybe don't get on the bandwagon all the way. But we are still talking about a kid that is only going to be a 20-year-old rookie that comes from legit NFL bloodlines with that level of size, quickness, speed, range, the ability to do everything, play the run, generate some pass rush. The asset he could be in both man coverage and specifically in zone coverage. He's a pretty sound fundamental tackler. He's got length where he can engulf. He could make some big hits and make some big plays happen. He can play with some physicality. I mean, the upside is tremendous. The upside is through the roof. So I am all the way on the freaking bandwagon. I know a lot of people are going to like Roquan Smith more, and I completely understand it. But for my money, I'm drafting for highest possible upside if I'm drafting that high. And to me, Tremaine Edmunds is a little more appealing as a bigger, faster linebacker than a Roquan Smith is. That's why Tremaine Edmunds, for me, is a top 5 talent in this draft. That is why, for me, if my Chicago Bears missed out on a Quentin Nelson and they ended up with a Tremaine Edmunds, I would be incredibly excited because I would feel like they got that last impact player on that defense in that linebacking core that they desperately, badly needed to take their defense from top 10 to top 5 and being an elite unit. This dude is a stud. And to me, he is the stud of studs in a really, really good linebacker class this year.